folks. The De Vere Ball was last weekend, so I thought I would record my remarks in case anyone was curious. So here goes. Good evening. My name is Phoebe Nir, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Edward de Vere Winter Ball, a toast to the true William Shakespeare. I'm sure to many of you the idea that William Shakespeare could have been a pseudonym is the bailiwick of the tinfoil hat crowd. But if you'll indulge me for a few minutes, I will attempt to provide a different perspective. Obviously, pseudonymity in the arts is hardly unusual and boasts a proud tradition dating back to Homer and the Tao Te Ching. Samuel Clemens, a passionate Shakespeare authorship truther who wrote an entire book on the subject, is far better known by his pen name, Mark Twain. The strongest evidence Stratfordians have for attributing the works to a man named William Shakespeare is, quite simply, his name is on the books. Admittedly, this is a point in their favor. However, consider the case of Charlotte Carmichael Stopes, a celebrated Stratfordian scholar who made it her life's mission to debunk Will's skeptics. She spent 8 diligent years searching for evidence connecting Will of Stratford to the Earl of Southampton, to whom Shakespeare's first publications are dedicated in extravagant, adoring language. After years of ransacking public records, she was able to produce 0 evidence connecting the two men, and died feeling that her life had been a failure. On the other hand, the Earl of Southampton had been engaged to Edward de Vere's eldest daughter, and the only other 2 people to whom Shakespeare dedicates his works, the Earls of Pembroke and Montgomery, were engaged to Edward de Vere's other 2 daughters. That's 3 daughters engaged to the 3 dedicatees. Edward de Vere's authorship, in fact, solves many Occam's razor conundrums that have tied up Stratfordians for centuries. The truth is, the Stratford man has always been an awkward fit for the body of work attributed to him, leading biographers to construct what Mark Twain called an Eiffel Tower of artificialities, and what Henry James called the greatest fraud ever practiced on a patient world. Why is there not a single contemporary reference to anyone ever meeting a playwright named William Shakespeare? If Will never left England, then how can Shakespeare describe in detail the artwork inside royal palaces in Italy where Edward de Vere stayed? How did a man from an illiterate working-class household learn to speak Greek, Latin, Italian, Hebrew, and French? And why would such an amazing autodidact not have ensured that his children could at least write in English? Let's discuss Hamlet, perhaps Shakespeare's greatest masterpiece. Scholars and theater lovers of all stripes have long suspected that the tale of the moody Danish prince has a whiff of the autobiographical. Stratfordians are delighted to point out that the name Hamlet is nearly interchangeable with Hamnet, the name of Will of Stratford's son, who died young of the plague. A recent popular novel by Maggie O'Farrell imagines how a heartbroken Will channeled his grief over losing his son, Hamnet, into writing the play Hamlet. Very nice. Now let's see if Edward de Vere's biography has any similarities with Hamlet. Hamlet draws from Beowulf, the only existing copy of which was possessed by Edward de Vere's tutor Lawrence Noel, who kept it in Cecil House, where de Vere grew up. Hamlet's book from Act 2, Scene 2 is Cardanus' Comfort by Girolamo Cardano, which Edward de Vere personally commissioned to be translated into English when he was 23. It's accepted that Polonius, the interfering father of Hamlet's love interest Ophelia, is a satire of Edward de Vere's father-in-law, William Cecil, Queen Elizabeth's spymaster and one of the most feared men in England. Edward de Vere's brother-in-law was an ambassador to Denmark in the Castle Elsinore in the 1580s, where he met 1 official named Rosencrantz and 2 named Guildenstern. Hamlet is reported to have been captured by pirates, stripped naked, and left ashore. In 1576, returning from a tour of his beloved Italy, de Vere was captured by pirates, stripped naked, and left ashore. Polonius alludes to young men falling out at tennis, referencing a 1579 scandal in which de Vere and his literary rival Philip Sidney had nearly come to blows on the Greenwich Palace tennis court, requiring the intervention of Queen Elizabeth. I have spared you the exhaustive list of Oxfordian references in Hamlet, and the Oxfordian references in Shakespeare's larger canon fill shelves of books. And for starters, I particularly recommend Mark Anderson's Shakespeare by Another Name. An Oxfordian reading of Shakespeare is not about being classist or contrarian. It's about the delight of drawing closer to the beating heart of these works and overcoming the reference unknown that popped up so irksomely throughout the Folgers editions I read as a kid in school. Consider that half of Shakespeare's plays are almost never produced, denigrated by puzzled Stratfordians as problem plays. The plays are good. Stratfordianism is the problem. Oxfordian scholarship today isn't actually that concerned with proving that Shakespeare was Edward de Vere's pseudonym, as that argument was laid out quite thoroughly 100 years ago in J.T. Loney's Shakespeare Identified. It is instead focused on understanding the role of Shakespeare's works in the tumultuous and fascinating Elizabethan world. It's been said too many times that history is written by the winners. Edward de Vere lost, and those who were loyal to his cause preserved his works behind the pseudonym William Shakespeare, where they have survived as a record of the tragic sunset of the Tudor dynasty. Richard III, Shakespeare's famous hunchback Machiavellian, was a dangerously on-the-nose portrayal of Robert Cecil, Edward de Vere's hunchback brother-in-law, who at the time was leveraging his vast spy network to place James I on England's throne against the wishes of de Vere and his confreres. Over the past several decades, cheerful despite their academic exile, Oxfordian scholars have produced astonishing findings, penetrating ever deeper towards the authorship mystery. These people are my heroes, and my urgency is driven by the desire to see their work recognized within their lifetimes. Edward de Vere, the man of infinite jest, spun a brilliantly tangled web to preserve his legacy. The mythical William Shakespeare was not just a pun, a pseudonym, and a dick joke, but also the allonym for a living person. Though it is strange for us to conceive of an aristocrat hiring a frontman for his creative work, there are historical precedents dating back to ancient Rome. There is so much more to say, but this is supposed to be a party, so I'll wrap it up. I'm anticipating a wave of hot takes about the supposed connection between Oxfordianism and whatever moment the media is currently struggling to define. It has been my project to propel Oxfordianism into the zeitgeist, and it does feel like, fingers crossed, a new wave of interest in Shakespeare's authorship may have begun to form. I want to be clear. The Oxfordian movement is about more than politics. It's about the truth. Thank you.